never underestimate the power of drugs because drugs are fucking amazing. They're great. Drugs are so good, they will ruin your life. That's how good they are. That's how good drugs are. Now, personally, I have never stuck a needle in my body. I mean, I've had needles stuck in my body, but for doctors and shit like that, blood work, right? I'm pretty afraid of pain. I don't like physical pain. Emotional pain, oh, I can take so much emotional pain, but physical pain, not great for me. Not into it. If I was ever being tortured, but like for state secrets or something, I would immediately give them. I wouldn't even need to be tortured. I would 1,000% betray everything that I could possibly think of betraying because I can't do physical pain. But emotional pain, I can handle that. But handling emotional pain, it depends on what you mean by that. Can you stuff it down and act normal? Absolutely. Can you deal with it sober is an entirely different animal. It's a different thing. And there are drugs that are in classes, right, of things that you do that affect you differently. Okay, so using myself as an example, right? I have done a shit ton of drugs. Okay, cocaine. Oh, cocaine, so much fun. Doing cocaine off of a stripper's ass, something you only really see in movies, was a real life memory, is a real life memory for me. And that's not something to be proud of. It's just that's the type of stuff I was doing when I was 21 and 22. Probably just those 2 years, really. Obviously, alcohol, right? If you count that as drugs. Pills, Xanax. Done plenty of Xanax. I used to play basketball a lot, and then I would take Xanax and mix it with alcohol and go out or whatever. And then suddenly, just trying to play basketball after that period of my life, my hand-eye coordination would just completely disappear. I've tried some other stuff, ecstasy maybe once or twice, even spiritual drugs, ayahuasca, bufo, combo, things like that. I'm trying to think if there's any other drugs that I've done. Anything that's harder than marijuana. And I think that might be it. Pills, sleeping pills was even a problem for a while as well. Just they take enough sleeping pills, take 2 or 3 sleeping pills, and you have like a fog that comes over your brain. And that fog kind of descends slowly like this until you just feel your whole body kind of a weightless. You just end up feeling like a pillow, rather coincidentally, given that they're sleeping pills. But of all of that, and as all dangerous or as addictive as they might be, especially things like cocaine, the thing that people underestimate the most, other than just drugs in general, would be marijuana. Marijuana is one of those things that me, myself, everybody, right? A lot of people tend to treat marijuana as if it's something that it's no big deal. It doesn't really matter. It's only marijuana, right? Cigarette action, right? You can smoke it. Of course, unlike a cigarette, you can eat marijuana. You can ingest THC. I mean, they even have THC drinks now, which I don't know if I'm proud or not to say that I've never tried. I've never actually tried a drug-based drink. I've never tried a drug-based drink. That's something. Hey, look at that. Not too bad. But as many methods as you might be able to ingest marijuana, people tend to have this stigma around cigarettes, of course, but with marijuana, there's much of a past. Now, not everywhere, but I live in Canada, where it's completely federally legal, and in places like California, where I used to live, it's legal as well, right? So there is stigmas, of course, but socially, it's much more acceptable now, especially in a city like Toronto, where I live, in Canada, for all you Americans that don't know where things are. And it's as much as that might be true that people here are a little bit more comfortable with it socially, especially, right? The way that people smoke it is like cigarettes, right? Just puff, 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 puff. But cigarettes give you a little bit of a buzz, right? And then you can kind of get through your bullshit meeting or whatever. But marijuana gets you high, as it turns out. And of course, you can manage the THC levels, but people tend to underestimate the relationship that they have with marijuana. And I'm speaking, of course, even from myself. Now, ideally, in my most ideal fantasy world, I would smoke weed a couple times a month. I'd watch a Star Wars sci-fi movie, maybe have a bag of chips or some McDonald's chicken nuggets or some bullshit snack, chocolate bar, obviously. And that would be great. If I could just do it a couple times a month, and then things would be wonderful, right? But the problem with marijuana, which people don't tend to understand, is that it's taking your emotional state that you're currently at and it's amplifying it. And then, of course, maybe the opposite of amplifying it is that it can make it worse, right? So if you're generally peaceful and happy and things are going good, marijuana tends to, make you feel good, you have a good time, and then what ends up happening is that when you're coming down, it brings you back to that base state, right? Which is happiness or peace or some contentment. But if your base state is not so happy, maybe depressed, a little sad, agitated, anxious, worried about something, right? You got something going on, then really, sure, the getting high part might be like, oh, thank God I'm high now and don't have to deal with this. But when you come down, you're back to reality, which causes a problem. Now, that's true of every drug, obviously, right? Because even though I did cocaine before, I stopped. I stopped eventually. I did it for a year or two, but I stopped. Okay. Other people, friends that I had at the time, they just kept going. Okay. I stopped. And I'm usually able to stop. But when it comes to things like marijuana, I'm not able to stop. Can't do it. Marijuana and chocolate. And I don't know which one to give up first, to be honest. Probably marijuana. Chocolate's just too goddamn good. But this is the thing. As much as I pride myself on my ability to let go of things and stop doing things that are bad for me, the marijuana thing is still a relevant part of my life, because my fantasy is, yes, I would love to do it a couple times a month, and that would be great, once or twice a weekend, maybe the end of the month on a weekend or something. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that, because if you divide it into over time, if you smoked marijuana the last weekend of every month, then you might have only done it 12 times in a year, which is really, like, in a place that's legal, is that so bad? Absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with doing anything, really, I think. I mean, harder drugs is a little bit of a different conversation, but the idea of doing something to alleviate your current mental state is not unheard of. Whether it's a shot or a little bit of alcohol, going out with friends, it doesn't really matter. Nothing is inherently wrong with that. But the thing about marijuana is that we're underestimating it at our own peril, because we're not considering the effects that it has on our mood, right? On being overtired or exhausting, or of course you smoke, you get high, and then you eat usually unhealthy food. I've never been high and craved a chicken Caesar salad, to be honest, or anything healthier than that, which could just be some rice and salmon. I don't crave rice and salmon when I'm high. You know what I crave? Like a fried chicken sandwich and French fries with some weird sauce that you dip the fries into, then you eat, and then you get fat. That's what I crave when I'm high. So ideally, if you do that a couple times a month, then you're all right. But if it starts to develop into a habit, then suddenly you've got something that you can't get rid of anymore, and it becomes an emotional addiction, becomes a mental thing. Yes, maybe there's not a physiological sort of thing happening, or maybe there's no physical addiction in of itself like cocaine, but marijuana is a dangerous drug in many senses, and I would support it absolutely, but it's dangerous, because for me personally, what happens is that when I do it more frequently and when it becomes a crutch that I lean on, it affects the things that I want to do. It affects even something like this YouTube channel. The point of this YouTube channel is to help people. It's to take my experiences from my life, share my wisdom, share my pain, my suffering, and to then give it to you people. And if I did this in a consistent way, then I would reach a larger audience, but I don't do it in a more consistent way. And it's not just because I'm lazy or don't care about marketing. It's also because marijuana. If I find myself in a low point of my life, then, or dealing with something that I think is very difficult to handle sober, then I rely on the crutch that is marijuana, right? Now, how can I, in full capacity, help other people if I myself escape my own emotional pain, right? The things that I deal with. How can I actually help others if I myself am imperfect? And there's always going to be that pressure, I think, within spirituality, within the development of self, to get to a place where you're so perfect and well off that then And only then can you help others and have all this success and be this kind of person, right? So what's way up here outside the frame of this camera, that's where we all want to go. That's where I want to go. But I'm not there. And yet all I can do is make a video maybe to say, hey, I'm not there. And maybe possibly you aren't either. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be a drug or alcohol. It could be a food. It could be any other kind of addiction. It could be any habit. It could be anything, right? There's plenty of things that people do on a daily basis that we underestimate because they become part of our habits, and things that don't have the same stigma that we also underestimate because, well, it's cool, they're doing it, it's legal, it's whatever, it doesn't matter. But from my personal experience, drugs in general are one of those things that you really don't want to underestimate, because before you know it, and of course it's always too late, you have some habit, you're addicted, you're relying on it, it's a crutch. And then the process of getting out of that ends up becoming this whole goddamn thing where it's now like an enemy and it's a villain and always black and white, and nobody can just have fun with anything because it's either, I'm going to do it all the time, or it's destroyed my life and I can never touch it again, right? It would be nice to exist in the middle somewhere, some kind of balance, right? And that's topics for other videos, for other conversations. But the point of this video is that if you find yourself, especially with some kind of addiction to marijuana or something, keep in mind, it's a habit. It becomes a habit, and don't end up like me, where the next thing you're smoking a bunch of times a week, and you don't feel as good as you used to. You don't want to get to that point, right? You want to take care of it now. So don't underestimate marijuana. Don't underestimate drugs, because they don't underestimate you. They don't. That's why you end up in a position where you think, shit, I'm addicted. I got a problem. Because we don't pay attention, right? Drugs will continue to work as they're meant to work, and they'll affect our brain as they're meant to affect our brain. But us, the ones that are actually living through the experience, it's often too late before we wake up and realize, like, oh shit, like, it's real now. Something actually happened.